Open the podcast doors, Hal.
It's Kubrick's Universe, the Stanley Kubrick Podcast.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Kubrick's Universe. We join you now in the beginning of summer 2020 as the COVID-19 crisis continues to loom over all our lives, and with sweeping social changes taking root, the likes of which have not been seen for a half century. Interesting times, to put it mildly. But since there's never a dull moment here in Kubrick's Universe, we'd like to offer a pleasant distraction from the many challenges we're all facing these days. We're going to continue our conversation with the wonderful Keir Dullea. In today's episode, you'll hear him chat with us about how he came to work on 2001: A Space Odyssey, meeting Stanley Kubrick for the first time, his experiences on the set, and how it altered the trajectory of his career and changed his life. But Keir also shares some other really fascinating stories, from his love of theater acting, being involved with the first Broadway revival of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof with Fred Gywnne, who will, of course, forever be remembered as Herman Munster, to his first major stage role, performing with the legendary Burl Ives, as well as post-Space Odyssey screen roles he remembers fondly, including Paperback Hero and The Fox with the late great Sandy Dennis, playing Audrey Hepburn's father on screen opposite Jennifer Love-Hewitt, and even his love for the inimitable Canadian singer-songwriter Gordon Lightfoot. In this episode, Keir also shares something very personal. It wouldn't feel right calling it an exclusive, since obtaining such a thing has honestly never been a goal of ours. Better to say it occurred naturally, within our conversation, I suppose, when he felt comfortable telling us what he did. Regardless, it was an act of generosity from Keir, for which we will remain forever grateful. So, if you're safe and at least 6 feet away from others, kick back, take your mask off, put your favorite earbuds in, and join us as we continue our travelogue with Keir Dullea in Kubrick's Universe. Yes. We have a question from one of Europe's best Kubrick archivists, a fine guy, gentleman named Simone Odino. He came across some information that Stanley may have mentioned, perhaps facetiously, considering other actors for the role before you, such as George Peppard, Burt Reynolds, and Paul Newman. And I believe there was a rumor about Warren Beatty. Did you ever hear about that, either before or after you were
I didn't
given
hear about the... I have heard that there were a number of well-known people, including Warren Beatty. It's the only name that I've heard. But I've heard, I don't remember where I heard this, that there were a lot of people, a number of actors that were anxious to get that role, yes. But the only one I actually heard was Warren Beatty. But the others, maybe, I'm sure that's a possibility. By that time, I think a lot of people will be, after Dr. Strangelove, really wanted to work with this film.
Mm. Do you recall how you felt knowing that you'd gotten the part over these very notable guys?
Well, I didn't know. That wasn't until some years later that I heard.
Oh, I see. I see.
Warren. I didn't know that. I hadn't heard that. It was just, I was, I heard that I was off this role while I was doing Bunny Lake is Missing. It's one of the high points where my wife really kind of lit up. I was one day after work, after filming in that film, I arrived home and my wife said, "Your agent call your agent." So I called my agent and he said, of course I had to get the time. Well, I don't remember what time of day it was because it was 5 hours difference from London to New York. Anyway, he said, "Are you sitting down?" I said, "No." I said, "You better sit down." I said, "Why?" He says, "Well, when I give you the news why you may wish you'd been sitting." I said, "Okay, what's what?" "You just been out of the blue." He said, "You've just been offered the leading role in Stanley Kubrick's next film." And I hadn't heard I didn't know I was being thought of. I hadn't been interviewed by anybody.
Wow.
It was completely out of the blue.
Wow. That's the day to change a young actor's life for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. And of course, I mean, I was such a Kubrick fan. I was thrilled. and my first encounter with Stanley, this might amuse that Gary Lockwood, who played the other astronaut, and Stanley were no longer willing to fly. I had flown before in my life, but flying made me so nervous. And Gary Lockwood felt the same way, and Stanley did. In fact, Stanley, early in his adult life, got a private pilot's license.
Yep. Yes, he did.
And as soon as he got the license, he never flew again. It's
a fascinating little subset of his story.
Yeah. So the three of us would not fly. So I don't remember, it was the Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mary, one of the two well-known Cunard Line ships from New York to England, and they had arranged for a little cottage up in an area called Hampstead Heath, which is north of London. So it was sort of on the way to the studios that I'd have to go to every day, which was further north. And so my first morning, after my first night of sleep, I wake up and the phone rings, and the voice asks for me, and I said, "Well, I'm speaking." And then the voice said, "Oh, hi, this is Stanley." That was my first encounter with Stanley Kubrick. Anyway.
Wow. Well, according to our notes, you had arrived on the USS United States. Now, this is, of course,
it could have been. I have traveled on the U.S. United States, but I don't think it was. Listen, it might have been. My memory was it was one of the queens, Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth. It may have been the other. I get them a little confused after all these years.
No, it's okay. It's just a technical note that I didn't want to get erroneously for the purpose of, accuracy for our listeners and so forth. So I want to ask about the preparation you did for the role of Dr. Bowman. For example, do you have an inkling of what subjects Dr. Bowman might have studied to earn his PhDs, things like that?
Oh gosh, we did have a lot of discussion. When I arrived in England to make the film, I didn't start principal photography for a few weeks. Doing costume changes, but also with a lot of meetings with Stanley and Gary Lockwood. The three of us would have meetings when we talk about our characters and. The detail, I'm sure there was more detail than I remember, but it had to do with the fact that the two of us might have had double doctorates in various scientific subjects. And the important, I think, aspect of what we discussed was not so much what our backgrounds were. We talked about it, but I think the most important thing was the discussion of our psychological makeups, and that we were the kind of individuals who were so steady in their makeups and their psychological makeups, so down to earth and steady, that an event that would cause you and I to go screaming out of a room would only, in our characters, raise an eyebrow.
Right.
And that was the important thing. And, and I think, when you watch the film, you hear, there isn't a lot of dialogue, but what dialogue there is, it's very kind of down to earth and straight, kind of, for the most part, unemotional. And of course, I like to explain that the reason there isn't a lot of dialogue is that these two individuals, played by Gary and myself, have been in space for months, many months. And most everything on a personal nature has been talked about already.
Right.
I know where he was brought up. I know, I've heard about his family, et cetera, et cetera. And he has heard about mine. There isn't a lot to talk about except for the few things that come up having to do with running the ship. And until Hal goes crazy, the ship, it's pretty mundane. There isn't a lot to talk about. I mean, so much so that the first bit of dialogue with the computer and myself is when I'm kind of scribbling. I mean, I'm kind of doing a little drawing. I'm kind of doing a little sketch of one of the other astronauts that's in deep, well, I can't think what the word is.
Hibernation, or deep sleep.
Hibernation. Deep hibernation. And he asked, "Oh, can I see it?" So I hold up the sketch to Hal's red eye, and that's it. That's how little is going on until stuff happens.
Has anyone ever brought up to you the notion that it is in fact Hal who is expressing more human emotion during the story?
Well, I don't know. I'm sure it's been said, and I've said it. I mean, I've brought it up with people.
Right.
In a way, there's seemingly more personality there behind the voice than there is in Gary Lockwood's and mine.
Well, when Douglas Rain returned, as you did for 2010, the scene when he's going to be disconnected and he asks, "Will I dream?" that gets me every time.
It's interesting. Doug Rains, of course, he didn't do his voice a lot. It was pre-recorded, so we had his pre-recorded voice to work with when we shot 2010. But when we did 2001, he hadn't cast that character yet. He had gone through a lot of ideas. And didn't think any of them was right. He actually hired a British actor whose name is Nigel Davenport.
Mm-hmm.
And he was on the set with us for a week or so, but Stanley said, "No, it's too British. It's wrong." So he paid him off. So he decided not to make that decision until post-production. So he just turned to his assistant director. Derek Cracknell was his name. And he said, "Derek, you do the voice of Hal for the boys," meaning Gary and myself. So for the rest of the film, the voice of Hal was something like this. "Oh, it's all like this. I can't do that. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't do that, Dave. No, it's all like this." That was the voice of Hal for us.
Oh my gosh.
A little like working with Michael Caine.
Yes. Yeah. Very, very Cockney.
Yeah, very Cockney. Exactly.
That, I'm sure you were able to get in the moment, but that must have posed a little bit of a in the moment type of challenge. I mean, not that you would have known Stanley was going to be using someone completely different, a different voice entirely. But, if you're on that set, I imagine you're Keir Dullea in 1966 and 67, and you're seeing the magnitude of what Stanley's created just on the set in order to accomplish his vision. And he's saying, "Yeah, just, go with it. Let Derek read his, Hal's lines for you." It would certainly require all your acting skills just to...
Well, yeah. Although probably by the time this switch was made, because again, we had the British actor doing the lines for a week or so, but then when Derek Cracknell did it, by that time, I was used to Derek because he was our first assistant director. So he was there every day. I always heard his voice. In fact, the whole crew was Cockney pretty much.
Right.
Because the whole crew was British for the most part. So, I sort of was used to it, and, I was able to deal with it pretty easily at that point.
Do you have any recollections about the gap between the murder of Hal and then Dr. Bowman leaving the Discovery to enter the Stargate. And I ask because there is a real sense of poetry that takes over the film at that point. All the story points henceforth are left to the audience's imagination. But at the same time, there are some really practical things we imagine Dr. Bowman would have to do, like disposing of the bodies of the other astronauts in hibernation.
Right.
Do you recall how much thought was given?
Well, we knew we were going to have to portray those actions that you just described because it wasn't in the script and wasn't planned. After I dismantle Hal, the next time, in a sense that you see, well, the next time you see the ship, a long shot of the ship. As I remember, hovering in the vicinity of Jupiter, isn't it? I'm trying to think. When you see it, it's a long shot of you see the ship. You don't see me, but you know I'm in it.
Right.
But it's the next time you see me is when I'm beginning the journey through time and space.
Right.
In the journey that ends up with me in that strange room, in that Louis XVI decored room. And there's very little of me in it. A few shots of my reacting in wonder or awe or whatever, with my mouth wide open in awe. Sometimes it almost looks like still shots.
Yes.
And that was all it was that the camera. I've never had one of those 60. It was trying to remember the kind of cameras that were used in that film, but it was they were gigantic machines. I can't remember what the technical word was for the cameras they were using, but they were immense close-ups where my eye could fill. In fact, sometimes it did. It showed, an immense close-up of my eyeball, or my face, and what that was just, there was no set. It was just a platform, and I was standing on a platform with a lot of light in my face and a camera, like right next to my face. And, I did certain reactions, but, there was nothing to look at. It was just, I had to use my imagination.
Right.
But in that whole journey through time and space, there's very little of my face. Most of it is all those extraordinary visual effects that is described in some detail in the book we were just talking about.
Well, they were created with the, at the time, brand new invention of the slit scan technique that Douglas Trumbull had developed.
Right.
We had the pleasure to chat with him for our show, and he gave us some really fascinating insight on some technical aspects of how Kubrick established the shot of your face within the windshield, for lack of a better word, the little bubble where we can see your head and your shoulders and your forearms as you're preparing. What happens with your character physically on screen is just breathtaking still to this day. The jarring movement, and Douglas explained to us how some of that was accomplished. And I believe that once you had mentioned doing some special kind of isometric exercises to simulate the shock as you were going through the Stargate. Do you recall anything about them, or did you come up with them yourself?
There's a shot where I think it was used there, where I'm sort of shaking, trembling in a way, which I can do. I sort of stretch some muscles in my neck, and I can make my head kind of quiver very quickly. It's not quivering. I can't. It's just it's like it goes into this rhythm of shaking. I remember doing that, but it's a little vague now, the memory of the experience, except, as I said, very little of it is really on my face. I mean, most of it were those extraordinary, that journey through time and space, which was brilliant, I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. And in the pantheon of, iconic film sequences, for the viewer to be taken with you, with Dr. Bowman, on that journey, not just visually, but emotionally, it is safe to say, I feel it's very well conveyed emotionally. And then we end up with you in that hotel room scene at the end of the film. And as we understand it, there were a few scenes which were photographed, which did not, of course, make it into Stanley's final edit, such as the clothes were laid out on the bed. Were there any other sequences you remember that were tried and abandoned?
I don't remember. I don't even remember I guess it was done, but if the sequences with my clothes laid out on the bed, I don't know if I'm in that. Was it filmed with me in the room with those clothes on the bed? I don't remember.
I believe so.
Yeah, there's a photograph. There's a photograph that shows you in I think you're in the spacesuit, and you're stood next to the bed, and there's some folded clothes on the bed. It was probably just kind of it was probably just an idea that Stanley came up with. But there is a photograph showing that situation. Yeah.
Gosh, I'm sorry. I'm sure it was. Well, if you had a photograph, then it happened. But I can't remember it.
Oh, don't worry. It's a long time ago, Keir. A long time ago.
Oh, I'll tell you something about that scene, though. You might be interested. The makeup for the oldest version of me lying on the bed, reaching up for the monolith, that makeup took 12 hours.
It's understandable. I mean, when you achieve that effect, I've read that before. But the proof is in the pudding, as they say, because the special effect of you being 200 years old, there's no second guessing what the viewer sees. It is what it is, and it's right there before you, and you believe it the moment you see it.
As a matter of fact, Stewart, the makeup man, should have won the Academy Award for his best, and he didn't, but he should have. I think, what was the Planet of the Apes one, and if you compare those apes with the cavemen, I mean, it's just they're cartoons of apes, and his work on those suits that they were dancers who portrayed the ape men. Mm-hmm. There's no comparison.
I've thought about that many times over the years, and I'm never able to immerse myself fully into it because of the sort of cartoonish aspects of and it's not that I don't want to go with my suspension of disbelief, but what I'm trying to say is, of course, I had already been fully ensconced in 2001, so to see what was accomplished with the Man-Apes and Dan Richter, who was not only hired initially to become, the lead man-ape, whom was called Moonwatcher, he was soon after charged by Stanley with training the entire troupe of mimes.
Yep, that's right. Because I didn't meet him. That was that's the Dawn of Man sequence was the last to be filmed.
Mm-hmm.
So I was gone. I never had a chance to meet him at the time.
That I've read that in the past, but that's interesting to hear. I've also heard that there were at least discussions about shooting actual scenes with members of Dr. Bowman's family. Do you know if any of them were shot? Because as we understand it, Roger Karras's son, Barclay, I believe was his name, was supposed to play Dr. Bowman's son at some point.
Huh. No, I of course they had Gary Lockwood's parents, Frank Poole's parents, sing "Happy Birthday" to him, and so they did cast two people for that, but they didn't know them. I don't remember ever. They must have. I don't remember it being discussed. It must have. They must have decided not to do it before I arrived, because I don't remember hearing about that at all.
Well, Ann Geddes portraying Gary's mom in that scene, that for some reason that always stuck out with me. And then when, Wikipedia came along, years ago, I remember looking her up. She only passed away a couple years ago, and she had a remarkable career.
What was her name?
Her name, how did I just forget it? I just said it.
Geddes?
Ann Geddes, Geddes. Ann Geddes was a child actor.
Geddes. I'll be darned.
And at the time she played Gary's mom, she was not that many years apart in age. I think she only passed in January of 2018 or perhaps 2017.
I'll be darned. I'll look her up.
Yeah. So do you remember if in the hotel scene at the end of the film, had it ever been discussed to have you getting younger instead of older? Because some of the notes from the Kubrick at the University of London archive do suggest that was floated, this idea.
No, it was never discussed. I never heard about that. I mean, about that concept. I mean, when it got to our section of the film, it had already been decided that I would be getting older, and the only time I guess you could say I got younger was when the fetus appeared.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I was going to say, because it may have just been notes, or Stanley, of course, would have had a million ideas a day going through his head about possibilities. So he may have just made a notation somewhere that this might be doable, or, maybe we go the other way. But then, of course, the film ends with you as the star child bringing rejuvenation to the planet Earth and beyond.
Right.
So in a sense, he did incorporate that, because you do get ultimately to the youngest possible phase of human life.
That's really, that's a jump cut, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, did you?
I don't know if you and I have talked about it when we met personally, but I think that the film has one of the greatest jump cuts in the history of cinema, and that is
greatest.
When the leading ape man, when Dan Richter throws his victorious club into the air, and in slow motion, it morphs into a space vehicle.
Yeah.
And it raises in slow motion, but the jump cut is it neatly jump cuts to a space vehicle. However,
it's a satellite.
That space vehicle isn't. Stanley doesn't tell us this, but that space vehicle is a nuclear weapon in orbit around the Earth.
It's an armed satellite.
So therefore, the most ancient weapon in one jump cut becomes the most recent.
And it's, as I say, the single greatest, most mind-blowing, I'm not the first to say it, jump cut in the history of cinema. I don't think it will ever be surpassed.
Yeah, absolutely.
How can you surpass that? I mean, to have seen that, I imagine, in 1968, I was 2 years away from coming down to planet Earth myself, but the fact that at that time, to be someone who could have experienced that on screen, just a viewer with an open mind who loved cinema, what must that have felt like? My parents got to see it. In fact, when my folks were dating, I mentioned this when I met you the first time, I think in 2018. My parents were, two young hippies in love, and they went to see 2001 on the big screen together. in 1968, and they were both just so taken by it. And I'm not sure if you recall, but the first time we met, it was just before my mom's 70th birthday, and you were so kind because you let me take out my iPhone and you recorded a personal happy birthday greeting, and I saved it for the next few months and waited until the morning of my mother's 70th birthday, because she always just, well, frankly, she had a bit of a crush on you.
Oh, that's lovely.
And when she woke up on her 70th birthday, I had timed it so the first message she would be getting on her iPhone was your voice greeting, and that was just so kind of you.
Hey, Marge, this is Keir Dullea. Happy 70th birthday.
Oh, yeah, I do remember making the recording. I'm glad. I'm very happy that it made her happy. That's great.
Well, she's going to hear this, so thank you for letting me just touch on that one personal side note.
Sure.
And real quick, Stevens just pointed out, I just want to get the name correct because I did say Ann Geddes. The actress who played Gary's mom was Ann Gillis, and she had a very long and successful career going back to when she was even a child actress and starred in a lot of pictures. And I believe she only passed away a couple years ago. Okay, so
she was an American. Was that, how do you spell Gillis? G-I-L-L?
G-I-L, yes, double-L-I-S, Ann Gillis.
And Gillis. Okay.
Correct. Great. So that's just for technical stuff. Steven's going to fix that later. Thanks for letting me touch back to that.
Sure.
Don't like to get the wrong info out there. So, obviously you and Gary, developed a friendship over the years. And, I don't know how many times I've watched 2001 just listening to you and Gary doing the audio commentary. I find it a whole separate experience of just watching Stanley's movie by itself, because at the point in time when you two had recorded that, you must have had a very good rapport as friends. But do you recall when you two first met, and perhaps like the first few times you got to hang out together?
I don't remember literally the day we met, but I noticed. But I can tell you that we always got along very well. I mean, it was a very easy going relationship. And the amazing thing is that Gary and I are very different people personally, but he is very West Coast. And I guess, I mean, I would say he says the same thing. Mm-hmm. He's West Coast, I'm East Coast. And, you know, he was a very physical, but very highly intelligent guy. He went to University of California, UCLA, actually. But he was a star athlete there. He was a quarterback on the UCLA football team.
Yes.
But he wasn't just a dumb athlete. He was, I'm sorry,
that's okay. It's okay.
They're intelligent. There are many intelligent athletes.
Of course there are, of course.
But he was not a dumb version. He's an extraordinary reader. He's I think an English major, and he's a highly intelligent guy. But you know, he brought up in a very different way. He was a kind of a cowboy, and he did stunt lining. In fact, before he became as such, he was a stuntman. Did stunts on horseback and westerns, and so he was in that sense very different. But we always got along very well. And I remember one of the first social aspects. I remember we all went out. We went to see him. Oh gosh. Trying to think who the star was of this movie. We went to see a movie together, and the movie we saw was oh gosh, who was the right after the Civil War? He was a famous commander who got killed in action fighting the Indians. You know, Custer,
General Custer, yeah, William Custer.
There was this in 1966, there was a big Hollywood movie in which he was the main character. It may have been called General Custer. I don't know if that was the name of the movie, but with a very famous actor. And I can't, this is 83 years old again.
No,
I can't
come on.
remember the name, but
Steve,
very, very famous actor.
Stephen, help us out. Was it?
It was
the title of it?
Custer of the West, 1966.
Custer of the West. Okay, that was my guess. I didn't want to get it wrong. Thank you.
Who played that part? An English actor played it.
Oh, Robert Shaw.
Robert Shaw, exactly. So
And it was directed by Robert Syadmak, who also didn't he make The Killers? He made The Killers as well in 46.
Oh my gosh, what a great movie.
That's a great
Oh my
film.
God. Yeah. Robert Shaw was very much a favorite actor of mine. He was a wonderful actor. I knew him very briefly through Irvin Kershner directed a very small, low-budget film with who played a very well-known actress was Robert Shaw's wife. I can't think of her name. Whoever he was married to, they did this he did a black and white, very nice little film with the two of them. And that was when I got to know him a little bit, because Kershner, I remained friends of Kershner for many, many years. Through the years, he introduced me to Robert Shaw.
So his wife was Mary Ewer.
Robert Shaw and Mary Ewer did a film together that Kershner directed, and I can't remember the name of it.
That's called The Look of Ginger Coffee.
That's right. Well done. Boy, you're quick.
I'm looking this up. Thank you anyway.
Well, you're still quick.
Thank you.
The Luck of Ginger Coffee. Yeah. It was a wonderful little film. And anyway.
Well, you brought up Robert Shaw and, and that he's one of your favorite actors. He's mine as well. I remember sometime when I was in college watching.
Remember Jaws?
Of course. And I mean, I was going to say that I had a friend who was a film major at Emerson College in Boston, which I attended. And he said he wanted to become a filmmaker after he saw Jaws. And we would have these wonderful, lengthy conversations about the film, and Shaw's performance in that, apart from so many others, of course, is just
so many others. Absolutely.
It's so iconic to this day. And I remember after the umpteenth time I'd seen Jaws and I'd seen his scenes with Richard Dreyfuss when they're comparing scars and so forth, and I thought, they don't make Robert Shaw's anymore, and they still don't.
I can remember, and I can't remember the circumstance. Maybe Kershner might have had somebody who I can't remember he was there, but at some point, it was in England, in which I had dinner with Robert Shaw and Sean Connery.
Are you kidding me?
And I can't remember why. I don't remember any details about the dinner. I just remember I was probably so overawed in meeting Sean, the two of them. I probably just kept quiet and listened, but I cannot remember, except I had dinner with them.
I mean, they did work together. Connery and Robert Shaw did both appear together in From Russia with Love from 1963.
Oh, of course.
So they were together in at least one film that I can remember.
I think they were old friends too. They knew each other. I think, or maybe I don't know how they met.
Well, since we brought up, your friendship with Gary Lockwood having begun on the set of 2001, do you have any memories of working or becoming friends with William Sylvester, or any of the other cast members?
No, I met him very briefly, because in fact, I actually did get to walk on the space station where they moved about the Blue Sweater. That set, it was a very large set, and it curved because it was a circular space station, and it kind of very gently, that section was that those scenes take place, and I may have, I can't remember for sure whether we met or whether I just walked on that set because I had taken it apart. And that was when I first arrived. But if we did meet, it was very brief because I don't really recall meeting him.
We've covered so much about 2001, and of course, it's impossible to separate your storied career from Kubrick's masterpiece. But of course, you did a lot of really great work in the years that followed 1968. And one of the interesting gems that was brought back into the public consciousness after the internet was a little TV show called The Star Lost.
Oh, that was a television series that was filmed in Canada, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Oh God, with a well-known science fiction writer who had created the idea. I can't think of his name either.
Harlan Ellison.
Oh, Harlan Ellison,
yeah.
Of course, yeah.
But it wasn't anything on particular. He made them take his name off the series. He didn't like what they did with it.
Earthship Ark, man's greatest and final achievement, out of control, drifting through deep space over 800 years into the far future. Its passengers, descendants of the last survivors of the dead planet Earth, locked in separate worlds, their destination long forgotten, heading for destruction unless 3 young people can save the Star Lost.
Pilot for that series, I got to work with Sterling Hayden, who's one of the few, very few actors, he being one of them, however, very few actors ever worked with Stanley twice.
Right.
But he did. He was in The Killing,
Mm-hmm.
called The Killing, and then in Dr. Strangelove, of course, Peter Sellers was the other actor who was in 2 films. I think they're the only major character actors. They actually, in the Paths of Glory, the one of the 3 men that's executed,
Joe Turkel. Yes,
it was used in another. He appeared in he appeared in The Shining as a waiter dressed in red.
Yes, he's Lloyd the bartender, and in fact, he's also in The Killing. He is one of only. Yeah, there are two actors not prominently known as character actors, although Joe Turkel certainly is, and we had the privilege of speaking with him, and let me tell you, the guy is 92, 93, and sharp as a tack. It was one of the most fun afternoons I think we had interviewing him, because he remembered everything. I had to keep up with him. It was like, a boxer going into the ropes, and he's just a great raconteur, and he was so kind to speak with us. But he was in The Killing, yep, and then Paths of Glory, and then he appeared as Lloyd the bartender, which is considered a very iconic performance. I mean, it's ubiquitous in popular culture, especially with, today's horror movie fans. But there was another actor, Philip Stone, who played Malcolm McDowell's father in Clockwork Orange, and he is in Barry Lyndon, and he is also what's the third one, Stephen?
The Shining. Is Delbert
of
Grader.
course.
Yeah.
What am I thinking? He is the butler in the red bathroom, and it's one of those little fascinating pieces of trivia that come up over the years of one being a devotee of Stanley and his craft, his legacy of art, to say, oh my gosh, that's right. There were only 2 actors who were in 2 films with leading roles, but there were also 2 actors who, appeared in 3 Kubrick films, although not as prominently.
Yeah.
And can I point out, there's a major leading player that we haven't yet mentioned, Kirk Douglas.
Oh, of course. He did too. That's
films.
right. Of course. So, I believe we were going to talk about your career after 2001, and
yeah. Oh yeah. You mentioned Star Lords. I'll just mention a couple of works that I did, which I'm particularly proud of. Actually, I'd forgotten, but there was a film I made after I shot 2001, but before 2001 was released, because it took so long it took 2 years for 2001 to be released from the time it was filmed. And because filming began in 1995. I mean, in 65.
65.
Yeah, and then was released in 68. In between those points, I did a film with. It's called The Fox.
Oh, I love The Fox.
Yeah.
That's a great movie.
With that wonderful actress, she's so great. She passed away too recently. Not the British actress, American actress. I can't think of her. The two women that have that relationship in the film.
Oh, Sandy Dennis.
And Sandy Dennis.
Sandy Dennis,
I love
right?
Working with Sandy Dennis. And that was done. That was a first directorial product. Mark Rydell, and he did. There's another well-known film with a well-known singer.
Oh, Bette Midler.
Yes. Yeah. He
Was it The Rose?
A film with,
Yeah, that was his as well.
The Rose. Yeah.
That was his also. Yeah. I'll talk to you about it, and if you're interested, are interested in other parts of my career. My high points are films like 2001 and David and Lisa, but also the high points of my acting life has been on stage, and I guess the role of my dream. I was in the first Broadway revival of Cat on the Hot Tin Roof.
Oh wow!
With it was the first there never had been a revival. It was the first revival of that. It's since been revived by the other productions on Broadway, but this is the first with Elizabeth Ashley playing Maggie the Cat, and she was nominated for a Tony. She should have won, I think. I mean, I was maybe biased, and the playing Big Daddy was Fred Gywnne. Fred Gwynne was brilliant. He was my first Broadway show was with Burl Ives. I could tell you.
Are you kidding
Burl
me?
Ives, nice. He was good at, but he couldn't touch the acting ability of Fred Gwynne. There's a huge difference.
I believe.
And also, people always thought of Big Daddy. They had to have a fat man. Well, Big Daddy doesn't refer to girth. Nothing to do with size. It's like the Oriental number one son, number two. That's what big meant.
Right.
The big honcho, and Fred Gwynne was 6'7", but he was very skinny, and he was brilliant. And so, about 6 or 7 years ago, I was asked to play in a production of Cat on the Hot Tin Roof. I played in the original with Elizabeth Ashley. I played the part that Paul Newman did in the movie. I played Brick, the son.
Right.
And then about years ago, approximately, they have every year a Tennessee Williams Festival in Cape Cod, in Provincetown.
Oh, of course.
On the Cape. And they did a production of Cat on the Hot Tin Roof, and I played Big Daddy.
You played Big Daddy.
I played Big Daddy. And that for me was the, in terms of the role, it was the most meaningful and the hardest and the most satisfying was to play that role. It's not a role I ever thought I'd be cast in, not in a million years.
But in a sense, you came full circle with Tennessee Williams.
Well,
play.
yeah. You've heard of people use the word to channel someone.
Of course.
Well, I channeled Fred Gwynne. I didn't copy him, but I channeled him. And Fred Gwynne's spirit. I did my own performance, but it was Fred Gwynne's spirit.
I get it.
That was alongside it, and that's why it was such a high point. The other film that I've done a number of other films, and that I don't know if I was as proud of them as other films that I've done, but there's one that I love doing that nobody hardly ever saw outside of Canada, it broke at its time. It broke the box office record of Canadian films in Canada, and it was released in the United States while I was doing Cat on the Hot Tin Roof with Elizabeth Ashley. But it didn't do anything. It had a tiny distribution, and it totally got lost. It never really ever got a chance in America. But it was a film that I loved doing, and it was. You can see the film for nothing on YouTube. It's there. You can see the whole film on YouTube right now, and it's called. The name of the film is called Paperback
Hero.
Paperback Hero. Now, there was another film that was made much more recently with that title. So if you Google it, that'll probably become, unless you get the release date right, and you put that in, and you'll get the right film. But it was released in 19. It was released in 19. It was made in 72. It was released in 73 or 4.
That's what they call hooking.
Hooking.
Hey. How come you never fight back?
You're just too big, I guess.
You never get pissed off at me, do you?
Why should I?
Oh, hell, hundreds of thousands of reasons. I go off with some broad and try to screw her, and I come back to you and...
Getting mad isn't going to change that.
Well, I guess you just don't love me, that's all.
Rick, let's get out of here, okay?
Why?
Because my ass is freezing to this ice.
Are you familiar with the singer Gordon Lightfoot?
Are you kidding me? My father knows how to play every Gordon Lightfoot song on guitar.
Well, I am a real Gordon Lightfoot fan, like you can't believe, and I was already when the film was made. And
wow.
The original title was going to be The Last of the Big Guns, but they got Gordon Lightfoot to re-record If You Could Read My Mind, if you remember that song.
Of course, only too
well. He re-recorded it, and there is a phrase in it, just like a paperback hero, in the song, and that's where they got the title from, Paperback Hero.
If I could read your mind, love, what a tale your thoughts could tell. Just like a paperback novel, the kind in a drugstore would sell. When you reach the part where my heartaches come, the hero would be me. Heroes often fail. You won't read that book again, 'cause the ending's just too hard to take.
Gosh, I never made that connection.
And that's where the name... You've never seen the film, have you?
I'm sad to say I have not, because I didn't know it was on YouTube.
How would you? You never... It's not anywhere. And I won't tell you any more, because it's... I'm very proud of the whole film, and it was a wonderful experience. It was a very low budget. It was a little like making David Lisa in terms of the intimacy of it. It was filmed in Saskatchewan, outside of Saskatchewan. The main city there is Saskatoon, is the name of the city in Saskatchewan, Canada. That's where it was filmed, and it's also a role that I was never casted. It is a completely. I mean, I'm the most unlikely choice if you were casting the film. And I'll tell you no more than that about it. But I'll tell you another film, which is might interest you, also go along with this general subject matter that this whole conversation is about, which is 2001, is the film I made in between Bunny Lake and 2001. It was Madam X with Lana Turner.
Oh, right.
I played her son, where That's why it's called Madam X. It's a whole, I mean, you see my character at the very beginning of the film as a little boy, and obviously I didn't play that. But years later, I'm a young, just new law student, graduated with a brand new lawyer, and I get my first chance to represent somebody, and it's what do you call it? So a lawyer that works for her. People can't afford lawyers. I can't think what the public defender.
Right,
yeah.
right. Yeah.
Well, there's this woman who, through a long series, Lana Turner's character, through a series of unfortunate circumstances, find ourselves in life situations, each life situation becoming worse than the last. And finally, she, in one of the last circumstances that she's in with Burgess Meredith, she is responsible for his death. And there's a murder trial. And she gets a public defender, which is me. Little do I know that she is my mother, but I don't know that.
Oh my goodness!
And she hasn't been in a mother's position since I was a little boy. And the film explains why she had to give up her life and disappear at that time. And then she goes through all these various lifetimes, in a sense, and ends up with this murder trial. And I'm her defender, defending my own mother and not knowing it.
In blazing headlines and sensational trials, she faced the world as Madam X. The producer Ross Hunter and the star Lana Turner of Imitation of Life and Portrait in Black combined talents to bring you another deep emotional experience. A triumph of acting for Hollywood's most glamorous star.
What do you want? The death of Holly Anderson.
Ross Hunter presents Lana Turner as Madam X, co-starring John Forsythe as Clay, loving, handsome, rich. But he was never there when she needed him most.
Where have you been?
Where have you been?
It's fair enough.
Ricardo Montalban as Phil, who tempted her.
Why, you contemptible rotten...
Contemptible rotten what? Never end on a dangling insult.
Please let me go.
If you promise not to leave.
Constance Bennett as Estelle, who betrayed Madam X.
You're an unfit mother guilty of adultery. No! I'll fight you with every breath in my body before I'll let you take my child. You have no child.
Burgess Meredith as Dan, who degraded her.
What do you want me to say, Danny?
The truth. Tell him who you are.
Betty Miller.
Drunken rebel.
And Keir Dullea as Clay Jr., star of David and Lisa, who came to her defense.
My client doesn't ask for her life. I ask it.
Oh, child, don't fight any longer. I killed Dan Sullivan.
Oh, I have to see that. I'm embarrassed. I haven't seen that.
It's not a well-known film, but it's I'm quite pleased with how it came out.
I just want to go back to David and Lisa because I did watch it again last night, and there's an amazing film that can never be remade from 1932, directed by Todd Browning, who did the first English version of Dracula, and his second film was called Freaks. Have you ever seen that movie?
No, I haven't.
It uses actual circus freaks. I mean,
yes, I think yeah.
And the scene at the train platform.
Who's the director of that?
Todd Browning.
Yeah, Todd Browning. Anyway, yes, I don't know if I think I've heard about it. I don't know if I seen it, but I think I heard about it.
There were two moments in David and Lisa that occurred to me. It had to be nods to Freaks, and one of them is the scene when you and the other students at the school, the other kids at the school, are, taunted by the husband and father, and he takes his wife and daughter away, and you kind of
in the railroad station.
In the railroad station, and you band together.
Who's that girl?
Whoever she is, she's very rude.
Holly, golly, golly, Holly. Golly, Holly, Holly, golly.
She's nuts. Must be from that school.
Teacher's Holly, 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 golly.
Damn it! What the hell do you think you're doing? You want a punch in the jaw? Don't touch me!
Excuse her, please. She was admiring your family.
She's not normal.
If you're normal, who wants to be normal?
Come on, David.
Let's go. I'm waiting for the train outside. Bunch of screwballs! Spoiling the town!
Bunch of screwballs spoiling the town.
Bunch of screwballs spoiling the town.
Bunch of screwballs spoiling the town.
A bunch of screwballs.
A bunch of screwballs spoiling the town. A bunch of screwballs spoiling the town. A bunch of screwballs spoiling the town. A bunch of screwballs spoiling the town.
And that, I mean, I've seen Freaks 100 times. It's one of my favorite films. And it immediately struck me that this was a bit of an homage. And then later, when you're speaking with the psychiatrist, you mentioned seeing a circus freak show, and your character describes seeing the half man, half woman.
Yeah.
And in Freaks, there is a real half man, half woman. Not makeup. Oh my gosh, I can't remember. It was both the name of the character and the name of the real life person. And one half of their body was muscular, like a man who goes to a gym, and full biceps, and the other half is entirely feminine, and has one breast, which your character describes seeing in the character, or seeing at the freak show.
Have you ever been to a freak show?
In a circus? A couple of times when I was a kid.
I went once when I was about 8.
Tell me about it.
There was this person, Georgina, half man, half woman. Half of it's his face. Had a beard on it, the other half was smooth. And it had a breast on one side, too. And I got so scared, I yelled and I ran right out of the tent. I remember lots of times my mother used to tell people about how Georgina scared me. They used to laugh.
But it wasn't funny to you.
Well, I was just a little kid. It wouldn't bother me now.
And there are all these weird little, but fascinating synergies. And anyway,
it really is a great film, isn't it? David and Lisa, and I was really surprised when I was reading about the 2 Oscar nominations it got in '62.
Yes,
and what competition it was up against that year. I mean, unfortunately, it lost to Kill a Mockingbird for screenplay and Lawrence of Arabia for director, wasn't it?
Yeah,
I think.
Thank you so very much. The nominees for the best screenplay based on material from another medium are Eleanor Perry, David and Lisa, Robert Bolt, Lawrence of Arabia, Vladimir Nabokov, Lolita, William Gibson, The Miracle Worker, Horton Foote, To Kill a Mockingbird. The envelope, please. Thank you. The winner is Horton Foote for To Kill a Mockingbird.
The nominees for Best Achievement in Directing are Frank Perry for David and Lisa, Pietro Germi for Divorce Italian Style, David Lean for Lawrence of Arabia, Arthur Penn for The Miracle Worker, Robert Mulligan for To Kill a Mockingbird. Please.
David Lean, Lawrence of Arabia.
That's an unbelievable year for.
Didn't Warren Beatty get either a nomination or win? I can't remember. The same year.
In that year.
Best actor, would that not have been O'Toole for Lawrence of Arabia? Maybe.
No, Peter O'Toole never won Best Actor. Believe it or not.
Did he not?
He never did.
But
no.
Warren Beatty. I thought Warren Beatty. What was the first?
Oh, would that have been Splendor in the Glass?
Splendor in the Grass.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
that was around that time. Yeah.
But that was around that time. It could have been the same year. I don't remember, but
Wow.
I think maybe it was.
And also, Keir that year for best screenplay with David and Lisa, Nabokov's Lolita was also in the running for best screenplay.
Oh my gosh!
In the same year as David and Lisa.
Amazing!
Yeah. Wow.
Huh? Kubrick's Lolita. Wow.
Yeah.
What was that like to realise that one of your second film was actually Oscar nominated? What did that feel like?
I'd forgotten. Because I wasn't at the Oscars that year, so yeah, no, I have since, but I don't think I was that aware at the time. I did get 2 awards myself. I got a Golden Globe for Best Promising Newcomer. I can't remember how they phrase it, but there is a Golden Globe. I don't know if they still give it, but in those days they had a Golden Globe for Most Promising Newcomer.
Ah, wow.
Yeah, and it's up in my office. I have a Golden Globe.
Wow.
For David and Lisa, and I also got Best Actor at the San Francisco Film Festival.
Oh, for the same film again for that.
Yep, for David and Lisa. Yep.
Wow.
Deservedly so.
Yeah, what a breakthrough that was.
Yeah.
The physical aspects of your performance are just as important as any word you say, any line of dialogue, and the way you carry David is on the one hand, very measured, not robotic, but measured and observant. And at the same time, it's also deeply, deeply human. I remember there's a scene when David and Lisa are doing the rhyme, and the scene when you say, "I don't want to rhyme anymore," and she's referencing snow and ice, and then the word sand comes into it. Now, I'm just throwing this out there because what happens at the Epiphany in the final scene is you use a word that rhymes with sand when you say, "Take my hand."
Oh, right. Oh, my gosh. Yeah. Yeah, that little did we know when we made that how important that whole facade of the Philadelphia Art Museum would become with Sylvester Stallone in his first film.
Right.
Oh, right, yeah, of course, yeah. Oh, right.
Same facade. That's when that's at the top of those steps.
Oh, I didn't realise.
It's exactly the same doorway and steps that because that's where Lisa is when I
Oh my
look
goodness!
for her.
Wow. So you and Rocky was literally in the same place. Wow.
Exactly in the same spot.
Wow.
For such an important scene.
Yeah.
And
truly, and of course that scene became iconic, and Bill Conti's piece of music was actually a hit single on the top 40 charts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That scene of him, and I believe that was Stallone's only Oscar. I forget if he won for best screenplay.
I think it might have got screenplay. Yeah.
He did.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing about David and Lisa, which I was thinking about over the last few days, is there's a certain amount of tension in the film, but there isn't actually an antagonist. You normally get an antagonist in a film, but kind of, I suppose maybe David's mother is a slight antagonist, but not a major one. So I guess David is I was seeing David as not only the protagonist, but the antagonist, his own antagonist.
If you think about it, he's the antagonism is within him.
I'm not too familiar with how many other scores that he wrote for movies, but the composer's name was Mark Lawrence, and I don't know what else he did, but gosh, if that music doesn't suit the visuals and everything else about that movie that works so well.
And actually, it's a love story, isn't it?
It is.
It is a love story. It's absolutely. As a matter of fact, just a side, it's nothing I talk about very much, but it's we're having such in a sense, a personal discussion here over everything. I fell in love with Janet Margolin, but I was married at the time that marriage came to an end. But I was married at the time, and I didn't have the courage to end it, or whatever. If that's what I hate to, it wasn't a marriage that was meant to be. But I just couldn't I didn't have the guts to kind of end it.
Yeah.
So the film was over. I had to completely shut myself off from Janet Margolin because it was too much of an experience. It was such. From my point of view, it was all or nothing, and unfortunately, it couldn't be all. So I had to create nothing at the end. But it was. But having fallen in love with her, it sure worked for the film.
Yeah, I'll say. Wow, that's really nice of you to share that with us. And I mean, I've
never ever mentioned this publicly ever to anybody, but
thanks, Keir.
It's the fact. It's the fact. Yeah.
Thanks, Keir. I mean, from the heart. That's on our behalf. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you that it's not hard to imagine how you'd have fallen into that position at all, because I fall in love with her every time I watch the movie. I'm not exaggerating.
She went on to, she had a very successful, she was very happily married to quite a well-known actor whose name, he had his own television series. I can't remember his name. I never met him, but I know they had a very successful and happy marriage. Of course, she came to an end because she died too young. She had... she died ovarian
cancer. She was only 50,
and which is Yeah. But she and I had a discussion. I must tell you, years afterwards, long after, this could have been maybe I could have been in my 60s at the time. We had we got together over an idea that had to do with a concept of these two people meeting again years later.
Oh, wow.
David and Lisa meeting again years later. I think my character was going to be a psychologist and so on. And I was able to contact her, and she thought it was a wonderful idea. And you may not know, or I'm sure you do know, but that David and Lisa was an adaptation from a book called Lisa and David,
yes,
by Burl Ives, a MD, psychiatrist.
Mm-hmm.
He was a psychiatrist. So I contacted him, and he agreed it was a wonderful idea. The idea was he was going to write a screenplay or a novel and then adopt the screenplay. I can't remember the details of what we were going to do, but he thought it was a wonderful idea, and he ultimately did write a book that was released as a book, but not as a film, because Frank Perry at the time would not give the screenwrite. He owned the screenwrite and would not give the screenwrites for the idea. But the idea was that Janet and I would play ourselves or those characters 20, 30 years later, maybe under certain circumstances. And he wrote the book. It exists. I can't even remember what the book is called, but if you Google Theodore Isaac Rubin, I'm sure it would come up. You would ask for what his books, because he's written a number of books, and it would be one of those later books that he wrote. Because it was our idea that gave him the idea to write it. And
gosh, would I give to see that film?
Yeah. So, and years later, because we were in contact just over that idea, we had a phone call where I was able to, where she knew she was very sick, and I kind of, in a sense, said goodbye.
Oh, man.
It was just over the telephone.
Oh, man.
And it was fine. I wasn't, except I was devastated to hear her bad news. Anyway,
understandably, were you two? It sounds like you remained, friends to some extent. At
well,
least.
we didn't keep it. I had cut it off because it was too much.
Yeah.
If I couldn't have that relationship, it had to come to an end. So we didn't contact each other for many, many, many years until sometime around the idea that we got this idea. And I don't remember how I even found her to contact her, but I'm sure I did somehow. And we had this idea, and we thought it was a great idea. So anyway, and she was, by this time, as I say, happily married, so she wasn't holding any disappointment or grudge or whatever she might have felt at the time that we didn't continue our relationship after David and Lisa.
Right. And neither were you two, say, pining over each other for all those years. It's
no, absolutely not.
An organic
way
of...
I was very happily married at that time.
There's something about her that, from every shot, I forget which actress I heard it said about, there are some whom it's impossible to get a bad angle of. And just the simple and timeless beauty of Janet Margolin in that film, it's one of those things that, I've joked, there's some women that they're just so beautiful in their own way that it almost hurts to look at them.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. She was in, oh God. Who was it? Who Take the Money and Run? That was
Woody Allen.
Woody. She was in a Woody Allen film, and I think that was the one.
Yeah.
Played the wife.
That's
later.
right.
I think, yeah.
That's right. Go on.
That's all.
Oh, I mean, I was just going to say, not to change tracks, but this is a true personal story of mine. When I was a little kid, I mean in single digits, my parents had the soundtrack LP for Franco Zeffirelli's Romeo and Juliet, and I stared at that cover photo of Olivia Hussey for I don't know how many hours of my boyhood. I thought she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. And all I had was the album jacket. And that's 100% true. So, and this goes to the fact that you shot Black Christmas, which has become a cult classic, and you starred opposite Olivia Hussey in that movie.
Yep.
And here I am watching, I'm thinking, gosh, not one, but two women who, for me, it hurts to look at, and he got to act with them both.
When I was a kid, like the age you're talking about, I don't know, 8 or 9, whatever, the woman, the actress that I felt that way about was Ingrid Bergman.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I'm still hung up on Audrey Hepburn, and I will be for the rest of my days.
Oh yeah, well that's just going pretty well too. Yeah. Anyway, so I played her. I played Audrey Hepburn's father.
The Jennifer Love-Hewitt film.
Yeah, my God, you know about everything. My God, that's an obscure thing for me. But anyway.
Well, thanks. I mean, I do have a life. I don't want you to think I sit around Googling Keir Dullea all afternoon.
No, I just say no. I think you're an encyclopedia of film. What I'm getting, Anyway.
Well, no, you're too kind.
So listen, we are isolating with my brother-in-law and his granddaughter. They are isolating with us. And so I really probably should, but I don't mean to have to close this, but is there anything kind of questions that you had answered or hadn't gotten to ask me, or, because I probably should draw this to a close?
No, you've been so kind and so generous with your time. We do have some questions, but I don't want to hurry through them now. Would it be imposing to ask if we could just spend maybe another 45 minutes to an hour, say next Monday or Tuesday?
Absolutely. Again, you want to make this, it's easier, or you want to make it 1:00 on Tuesday, next Tuesday?
Perfect. Stephen, lock it in.
Locked in. Brilliant.
Okay.
All right, Stephen. Great. Nice meeting you, Stephen.
Oh, nice meeting you, Keir. Thank you.
And
all right.
Then we'll talk soon.
Keir, we'll see you next week. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And keep well. And so it is, friends, that we come to the end of part 2 of our discussion with Keir Dullea. But Keir will return in episode 9, The Rise of Hal. Ooh, ouch. Sorry. Lame joke. The Star Wars movie, I mean. I did. I actually liked it a lot. So sue me. In our next installment, we're going to hear from A.D. Bush, who worked on Full Metal Jacket, both in a military training capacity and as a performer. Adi is a super swell guy, and it's a really fun episode. We look forward to bringing it to you very soon. Don't forget to subscribe to Kubrick's Universe on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean, or wherever you grab your tasty podcastables to go. Check out the Stanley Kubrick Appreciation Society on Facebook, the premier destination for Kubrick news and insights from experts and many members with direct connections to our favorite visionary filmmaker. My thanks to our producer, chief researcher, and all-around bundle of friendly fun, Stephen Rigg. Thanks also to Mark Lentz, James Marinaccio, Simone Odino, and Filippo Olivieri for their contributions behind the scenes. Lastly, we leave you with the sad news that someone forever linked to Kubrick's legacy has recently left us. I'm referring to Dame Vera Lynn, whose rendering of the song We'll Meet Again was not only featured at the end of Dr. Strangelove or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb, it was a song she made famous during World War II, entertaining the troops in Egypt, India, and Burma. They called her the Force's Sweetheart, and she enjoyed a long and happy career of over 75 years. In the year 2000, she was named the Briton who best exemplified the spirit of the 20th century. In 2017, at the ripe young age of 100, she became the first centenarian to ever have a top 10 album when her greatest hits compilation, Vera Lynn 100, rose to number 3 in the charts. She was still performing in early 2020. Incredible, beautiful, and totally true. I've put together and recorded my own little instrumental tribute to Dame Vera. Hope you like it. This is Jason Furlong saying thank you all for supporting our show. We really do appreciate it. Stay safe, everyone. We'll see you soon.
Don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day. Keep smiling through, just like you always do, till the blue skies drive the dark clouds far away. So will you please say hello to the folks that I know? Tell them I won't be long. They'll be happy to know that as you saw me go, I was singing this song. We'll meet again, don't know where, don't know when, but I know we'll meet again some sunny day.
It's Kubrick's universe. We just live in it.
We have taken very thorough precautions in this podcast against broadcasting anything which might only be attributed to human error.